Okay, this is Mike with Dgeneration Sports, and we're talking about the college football playoff rankings. The rankings just came out today. A lot of people have already had their opinions on the issue, so I'm going to give my 2 cents in this. So everyone understands Clemson, LSU, Ohio State. I think everybody had those in their top four. The biggest two questions I have out there is Alabama and Notre Dame. I have no freaking clue how Notre Dame is even in here at number 5. I mean, that's very troublesome because, if Clemson slips up and loses to like Florida State or somehow gets upset in the ACC championship game against North Carolina, which I can see happening, does that mean that Clemson is going to be out and Notre Dame's in after Clemson has beat Notre Dame? Because what the playoff committee is saying right here is Notre Dame, if they win out, and Clemson drops off a spot, that Notre Dame is going to be in the playoffs, and that's just retarded. I mean, it's just stupid. It's just saying how it is. You also have another issue with Alabama. How is a one-loss team, Alabama, in the top 4? They're not even the best one-loss team out there if you're just looking at the standards of how the committee is making its rankings. First of all, we should just do this. So we're very clear on these two issues here. Because these two teams right now should not be in this discussion for this week. Right now, Florida has one loss compared to Alabama's one loss. And what they're saying is that Alabama has 3 wins over teams that are 500. Okay? But Florida has 2 wins. So that's how everything is going to break out for that. What makes no sense is Alabama losing to Ole Miss. They lost to Ole Miss at home, and Florida destroyed Ole Miss. They won 38-10. Absolutely dominated that game. It wasn't even close. Makes no sense to me how Florida, who has 1 loss, should be not in over Alabama. And I don't even think Florida should be in. Alabama and Florida should not even be in this scenario right here. That's what makes no sense to me. Here's another issue I have. So Baylor is just so dominant right now. Everyone sees that, but the playoff selection committee is saying that they haven't played anyone. So Baylor right here and TCU, they're just not having anybody on their schedule right now, but we all know that's going to change. Baylor and TCU are out of it because of their strength of schedule. So now I want to get to that point right now. I want to focus in on Michigan State and Ohio State. Michigan State, out of conference, played Oregon, and in conference has already beaten Michigan. So you have Oregon and Michigan that they have played and they've beat. Ohio State right now, if we're just looking at what's going on right now, and I love Ohio State, I think they're the best team in the nation. But Ohio State, with the bad quarterback play that they've had and the lack of competition they've played, why aren't they lumped in with Baylor and TCU? How is Michigan State, who's played a good Oregon team when they had Vernon Adams, who was playing, and Oregon lost a couple games without Vernon Adams, so that's where, a lot of this stuff has come in from. But Michigan State, who played Michigan, which I'm not that high on, but the playoff committee has Michigan right here at 17. That Michigan's at 17, and Michigan State, who definitely has the best win and best schedule that Ohio State has to this point, is at 7, and Ohio State is at 3. I don't understand how that makes sense either. If they're going by that criteria, we should have a top 4 of Clemson, LSU, Michigan State, and I don't even know who the 4th person would be in that criteria. I would put in Baylor, just personally, because it's just what they've done so far this year. I expect with Russell being gone, however, they're going to drop off, so I think this is the prime position for TCU, and this could be TCU's year of getting in. But right now, just looking at what everything has done and with the scheduling wise, how do you leave Ohio State in over Michigan State if we're just going by schedule criteria? Because we're already saying Baylor and TCU are not in because of their schedule making. But Ohio State could be in because we just feel like Ohio State should be in. So, that's just one major issue. And again, Alabama, I don't even understand it. A one-loss Alabama team, they're saying right now today that if the playoffs started today, Alabama deserves to be in over Florida, who both played Ole Miss. Florida's only loss is to number 2 LSU. Alabama's loss is right here to Ole Miss, number 18. And Florida's loss at LSU was at LSU. Bama loses at home, and somehow we're just accepting the fact right now that Ole Miss, okay, the win for Ole Miss over Alabama means nothing, and the Florida beating Ole Miss and crushing Ole Miss meant nothing. I don't even understand what the playoff committee is looking at. So that's my 2 cents. We have to get rid of Alabama right now. Notre Dame, I'm very, very, very flustered. This pisses me off. Because Notre Dame, they did beat USC. I think that's a good win. But, Notre Dame does not belong to be here. Because they lost to Clemson in a rain-soaked game by 2 points, that they're going to belong here at number 5? No, it doesn't be here. I think at the end of the day, this stuff should sort itself out. I hope Clemson stays undefeated. If they don't and they put in Notre Dame over Clemson, who already won, that's going to be big bullshit right there. I think LSU is going to lose this week. And if LSU loses this week to Alabama, that means LSU should stay here in the top 10 over Florida and over everybody else with the Alabama criteria. So it's like if LSU loses this week, according to the playoff committee, why not just have 2 one-loss teams in there? Because that's basically what they're going to be saying. So there's no way by next week LSU is going to be out of the top 10. It's just virtually impossible. It could happen where LSU loses, everybody else here wins, and Florida will be knocked from 10 to 11 after this week. I mean, that's just stupid. All right, anyways, for the other teams, love Memphis right here. I don't understand why they're not higher. Iowa hasn't played anybody. I'm an Iowa supporter, but listen, let's just be honest. They haven't played anybody. Their best win, I think, is against Pittsburgh. And, they haven't done anything. Ohio State, by the way, their best win is against Penn State. So we're just, highly ranking Penn State out of nowhere? I don't understand this. So we got, Iowa. I think they're going to be eventually eliminated. Though they're going to go undefeated. You know what? How do I erase that? Erase. Can I erase? Nah. You know what? Iowa's going to eventually lose anyway, so I agree with there. So Stanford, this whole thing, Stanford right now, this is the game of Stanford and Notre Dame, who's already out of it. So Stanford and Notre Dame, this could decide who makes the playoffs, and I'm going to hate that because Stanford's going to make the playoffs after losing to crappy Northwestern. I have no clue how you're in here, Northwestern. You beat Stanford at home when Stanford was like sleeping at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's just one of those lucky games that happen. And, Northwestern's getting commended after losing 2 games by 30 points and more and getting crushed by Michigan and Iowa. And I guess they have them in there because those are the 2 losses and they have these teams ranked so high. So, what's going to be very interesting, though, is I think Memphis, right here, and Houston. This is going to be such a great game. I can't wait for this game. Winner of this game definitely goes into, I don't know what they call it, the playoff 6, whatever that is, the Big Bowl 6. And, this should be a good game right here. I would love to see Memphis with Ole Miss running the table and a 2-loss Ole Miss team in the SEC win the SEC championship with Memphis out and Alabama. And Alabama, who has 1 loss to Ole Miss, will probably be in the playoffs. Because if Alabama runs the table and Ole Miss runs the table, Ole Miss gets into the SEC championship game. That'd be just amazing. I hope that fucks everything up. So you got Ole Miss right here. They could just make everything just awesome. They could just run the table with 2 losses, probably be in the top 8 at that point. And then Alabama's here at 4, and it's how are they going to get them out with Memphis right here? And then the best part also is, what if Florida runs the table? I mean, Florida gets to the SEC championship against Ole Miss, and Florida runs the table. What do they do right here with Florida and Alabama? Let's talk it even better. What if Florida loses to Florida State? So Florida could lose right here to Florida State because Florida State's going to be out of this thing too. But Florida State and Florida play each other. If Florida loses to Florida State and we got Ole Miss versus Florida in the SEC championship, which I think is going to happen as long as Ole Miss could beat LSU, that would just be the greatest chaos ever. So we have eliminated all the SEC teams. So if we've eliminated the SEC teams, if that's the case scenario is, who the hell are we putting in? Are we putting in bullshit Notre Dame and the Stanford winner? I mean, that's just disgusting. I hope Oregon beats Stanford. I really do. Because, there's no way this team should be in there right now after losing to Northwestern, though they're playing very well. I had very high hopes for them. And, recently they've been, looking a little sluggish on offense the last couple games. So, I really like this Hogan kid. He's really good, Kevin Hogan for Stanford. I'm a big fan of that. But, after that Northwestern loss, I'm like, ugh, I just don't want to see him in the playoffs. It's just not going to entertain me. So, right here, we know Oklahoma State. They're not going to be able to make it. Oklahoma. This might be interesting. What if you have a one-loss Oklahoma team that just runs through Baylor and runs through TCU? Because Baylor and TCU... excuse me. Hairball. So anyways, Baylor and TCU, what interests me is their wins over West Virginia and Texas Tech, I think, are fantastic. I think those are two great teams, and Texas Tech and West Virginia, their losses, all their losses with Texas Tech and Virginia came at the hands of TCU, who's number 8, Baylor, who's 6, Oklahoma State, who's 14, and Oklahoma's that's 15. So we're going to condemn playing West Virginia and Texas Tech because they lost to 4 teams in the top 15. I mean, those are solid teams, and Baylor just crushed them by 28 and 24 points respectively. I think they beat Texas Tech by 28 and West Virginia by 24. Could be the other way around. But yeah, listen, I don't even understand why Texas A&M should be in here. They're not going to be doing anything. Mississippi State, unfortunately, had high hopes for them. They're out. They leave in Temple. Get the fuck out of here, Temple. UCLA is still in here. Get the fuck out of here, UCLA. Oh, well, Toledo lost today. So Toledo got stuck up to the ass. So get out of here. They just got screwed by freaking Northern Illinois today. So Houston. Houston's another team. I love Houston. And by the way, what is not being said in this whole time with Houston, and I want to bring it back all the way up here to Ohio State, is the offensive coordinator for Ohio State, who now is at Houston. Why isn't anyone saying that this Herman cat was such a great offensive coordinator for Ohio State that this new guy from ECU, Eastern Carolina, for Ohio State is just not cutting the mustard? I mean, I've seen some bad play calling. Cardale Jones, they had a passing attack planned for this guy last year. They had so many great plays that he threw the ball downfield, and they were trying to run, the regular Urban Meyer offense through Cardale Jones when Herman did not do that last year with him. There were so many passes down the field, and that's how they utilized him. And this new cat for Eastern Carolina, who's the new coordinator for Ohio State, is just getting crushed. And I love what, Herman has brought to Houston. It's just great stuff. So Houston right now, Houston and Memphis. This is, like I said, this is going to be a great game. This could be like a 100-point game. I'm going to be very, very excited for a game like this. I was going to be really excited for Baylor and TCU. However, Baylor losing their quarterback just crushed any hopes of that. I thought we were definitely going to get our first 100-point line with Baylor and TCU playing each other. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. I see Baylor probably losing to TCU and Oklahoma. I think the game that we're going to have to watch is going to be Oklahoma and TCU. That's going to be, I think, the game that brings in somebody. So that's my long shot. Oklahoma and TCU, I think that's going to have everything to do with everything. I pray Notre Dame is not in here. If Notre Dame is in here and they run the table, God help us all. All right, thank you so much for this week.